gotten it down to a deficit of about $3 million, which is really good on the part of the departments to cut costs. But when Dave came, we did some cuts, additional cuts that really hurt, as taking more of the capital items out of the general fund. The equipment replacement, this is a program that every department pays in to replace your equipment in the future. We put a hold on that for 1 year. We went in this year and we did some major cuts to the budget to get it to a place where we weren't, so that revenues would equal expenditures. And still, we were off by about $1.4 million. The expenditures exceeded that. And we just, at that point, you get to where are you going to have to lay off people to bring it down, which I'll tell you later, it's a happy ending when we didn't have to do that. So this slide just tells us some ways that how the adopted budget compared with last year. So our personnel costs, they went up about $4.4 million. When we talk about this, we talk about our benefits, our pension costs, our insurance costs, everything that is related to personnel. Of the budget, there were no new personnel that were put into the general fund. There were 5 personnel that were put throughout the other funds within the city, which weren't in the same position as the general fund, but the general fund had negative personnel. Our operating costs, so after we went back to the departments, did line item and line item, our operating costs went down from the prior year instead of up. They went down $424,000. And our capital costs went down 1.5. As I explained, this is an area where capital costs are supposed to be a one-time thing. So we went through and said, okay, if you've got anything budgeted in your capital budget, you're just going to have to wait till next year because we don't have the money this year.
I'm sorry to interrupt just 1 minute. So personnel went up by how many employees?
It didn't go up by any in the general fund. It went up by 5 in the other funds.
The other funds.
One was water and sewer, one was IT, one was in the building fund, one was in solid waste, and
Not in the police department.
no.
Okay.
So all that, the service levels have not been reduced. And the story ends where the city commission adopted an increase in our ad valorem revenue. So that gave us an additional $4.7 million in revenues to cover our deficit. And if you recall, I said we had a deficit of about 1.4, but the additional millage gave us 4.7. So earlier in this slideshow, you saw where we had reserves projected at 13.9 for the end of this fiscal year. So in order to get that 13.9 up for next fiscal year, we are able to put what we don't need to cover the deficit into fund balance to bring our reserve level back up to 20%. And that was the conscious decision that the city commission made. If we don't know where we're going to showing. This slide is what was presented to the city commission on the second public hearing. You can see our millage started at 3 mills. That's what we had in this year that we're in now. The city commission adopted to raise it 0.2730, and that gives us the additional 4.7 million. Our debt service millage, it usually goes down unless we issue new debt. We're just paying down debt. And then we have special districts in Golden Gate and Downtown Improvement District. This is our city table of organization for the fiscal year 26 adopted budget. We have 828 full-time employees. This chart doesn't include any part-time employees. This chart is specifically for the police department. And it gives you a 10-year history of the number of positions in the police department. There's currently a total of 253 sworn and general. So you can see from the slide, there's 63 general employees and there's 190 sworn. And that is the same as it was in fiscal year 25 and in 24. They also, well, you can see there's been 190 since 2022. This one. These are the major revenues that we talked about that supported the general fund a little while ago. So franchise fees, utility excise taxes, communication service taxes, house and sales tax, and state share revenues. I think I said, you had asked me how much, what percentage of that made up the general fund. What you don't see here is ad valorem, and ad valorem is about 50% of the general fund. Now, this is the slide that you saw in March, and I've got the 2023-24 number. I put that in italics because at this point, we haven't closed out fiscal year 25, so I don't have the updated numbers yet to give you on this, and I didn't want to give you unless they were completed. But as you can see from this slide, the revenues that come from the police department are major judgments, fines, and forfeitures. Something to consider when we close out 25 and then we work on 26 is that there's 10 additional red light cameras that are being added, that were added, and also we have the school speed zone detection devices. I can tell you in the 26 budget, we didn't overestimate revenues that we were going to receive there because we don't have any history on that. We can just see what we've received today on that. So I don't really feel comfortable telling you this is what we're going to get on that, but we will get an increase in revenues from those sources. And this is the same slide that you had in March. However, I've added a column, the last column, the budget for fiscal year 25 and 26. And I imagine you're interested in the green line, the police. So the actual expenditures in fiscal year 24, which ended September 30th, 2024, were $49.3 million. The budget for 25 was $49.8 million, and the budget that was adopted for fiscal year 26, which starts October 1st, is $51.7 million. Just want to add that police are approximately 48% of total expenditures in the general fund. This too is an old slide from March, and it just gives you an idea of your budget versus actual. And it breaks out by personnel, operating, capital, and other expenditures. This slide talks about the pension costs, the 3-year history. For each officer, a percent of his or her salary goes into the police pension plan. An annual dollar contribution is legally required to be budgeted and paid by the city. The plan funded ratio is the ratio of the funding value of the assets to the actuarial liabilities. So you are asking me about the budget for your pension plan. This is 8.4 million, 8.8 million is the amount that we have budgeted in the general fund to transfer to the pension plan. So every year we're legally required to make a contribution there. This slide is the amount that we would be putting into your plan. The actuarial contribution is a study that the actuary does. They base it on the interest rate, what is the economy doing, how much is the portfolio earning, are there any salary increases, are there how many terminations do they expect, how many retirements do they expect, and lastly, how many deaths do they expect with continuing beneficiaries. So that's how they come up with the number, the days of the city that we have to contribute each year.
That's the city's direct contributions to the plan.
Yes. This is, again, it's as of September 2024. You've seen this slide before, but it gives a financial picture of the police department activity for that fiscal year. The net cost of the department is equivalent to the ad valorem that we collected. So we budgeted 45.8 million in fiscal year 25, and the cost in 24 of the police were 45 million. Financial summary provided for the general fund for fiscal year 24. And of our 102 million revenues, 4.2 million were received specifically from the police. And of the total expenditures, 101 million, 49 million was police expenditures. So for fiscal year 24, we ended with unassigned fund balance or reserves of 29.1 million, which is 28.7%, which is right where we want to be, being a coastal city. We're in our GFOA range, but we have a little bit extra because of coastal city. Again, this is before the hurricanes. We haven't paid anything on hurricane costs at this time. And this just breaks down the fund balance. If you were looking at our financial statements, we indicated that we had an unassigned fund balance of $29.1 million. This slide provides the components of the entire general fund balance. And under GASB Statement 54, GASB is, again, governmental accounting standards. This is the way that we have to break out our fund balance or our reserves. This slide, I did update it as of yesterday because I wanted to let you know. So we have expended $16 million to date. We estimated we've got about $50 million that we're going to have to expend for the total damages, but to date we've expended $16 million. We've encumbered another $7 million. Actually, I got an invoice yesterday for about $1.5 million on some hurricane costs. The total obligated to date at September 30th is $23.3 million that we are assigned, that we paid in the damages. FEMA did upfront us $7.9 million back in the fall, right after it happened. I think everybody got hit so bad they knew there were cities that weren't as comfortable in shape as Sarasota, but anyway, they did give us a portion of that, so we are grateful. That means that I've only used $16 billion of my fund balance so far. As you recall, 29 is where I was at, and I just used $60 million so far to pay for the damages today, and that's not it. That's not all of it. So, I will tell you that in our adopted fiscal year 26 budget, more of the capital costs from the storms, we shifted those to some of our capital funds so that it wouldn't hurt the general fund as much because we don't have it to pay for in the general fund. But we had to, our CIP, our capital improvement plan, that's a 5-year plan, we had to shift around money to repair some of the buildings and the infrastructure that we had and postpone improvements going forward, just to take care of this being. And that's the end of my presentation. Any questions I can answer, I'm happy to.
You were mentioning earlier about 4 years ago, there were FEMA funds that have been trickling in from 4 years ago from the hurricanes. How much of that has made the city whole or been reimbursed?
Well, it was Amelia and Ian is what we received most recently. I mean, we've gotten like 30,000 or 400,000 or more, you know, not anything significant, because when we don't know that FEMA's coming, so it's kind of like, it's like a blessing when you get it. So this year, where we were gonna be 16 million in the hole, they kept it a little bit, but it's not been that much.
I'm just trying to figure out how much is left from those expenses from Ian and Adelia.
Oh, I don't know if they're still working on those. I can't answer that question.
All right, I'm just trying to figure out, like, if that money was spent 4 years ago, has it all been reimbursed yet? And if not, how much is left over?
Oh. I have to do that, I don't know.
Do you mind finding that out for us?
I could try.
If you could, please.
Or do you all want to get copies in case you guys want to talk about any questions before we come back?
That's a good idea. Right now. Yeah.
I just have one question. One of the, I guess, like the rumors at the police department was that reimbursements were not turned in time, we weren't going to get reimbursed. Is that false?
I don't
I
know.
mean, as far as you know, the
I don't know,
reimbursements.
that would probably be your,
As far as you know,
Rachel but we have several grants that are in progress, and we have a FEMA meeting every week.
but I mean, as a finance director, you would know if there was a major problem with the FEMA paperwork or where we
Yeah.
were not going to get.
It's not my knowledge.
Okay.
All right. We'll take a copies for a couple minutes, let us know when you're ready. If you have further questions from Mr. Circon. Thank you.